So in the last video, we created a Linux virtual network that contained two virtual machines that were part of a fictional organization. We also connected these machines using a pfSense router and firewall. In this video, we are going to look at concepts related to users and passwords. We're going to explore the concept of least privilege. We're going to look at password policies, and we're going to look at user naming conventions. So here we have our virtual network that we created in the last video. We've got our employee network on the Fedora machine, got our pfSense firewall running, and we've got our Ubuntu machine ready to go. So let's take a look at the first thing we're going to look at here, which would be password policies. So in Ubuntu, we can make use of something called pluggable authentication modules. And for the purposes of exploring something like password policies, all we need to know is that they can enable us to enforce certain password policies. And in this lab, we're going to be making our password policies so that passwords are required to be long, strong, and complex. In other words, 15 characters minimum, at least one uppercase, at least one digit, and one special character. Naturally, if you want the full story on PAM, Pluggable Authentication Modules, you'll want to consult the man pages and maybe ask ChatGPT to give you some use cases and summaries. So let's go ahead and get these password policies enabled. First thing we want to do is we want to edit the PAM common password file as super user. So we want to go here and sudo nano set pam.d common password. There we go. And put in Abel's password here. All right. So the first line you want to go to on a page down or whatever, in whatever editor you're using. And we're looking for this line right here, password requisite. Go to the end of that line and we'll start putting in what we're going to need. So to make it a minimum length of 15, we'll put in min length equals 15. Now these next values for the digit, the non-alphanumeric, special character, and the uppercase, we use lines that include the word credit. And all that means is what this is going to accomplish is requiring a certain number of those characters. So when you see this, just think the negative is how many are required. So let's start with the number, the digit. So we type in d credit equals neg1, and that means it requires at least one digit. So we're going to go here to u credit, which means uppercase, and that's going to be neg1, and then o credit. This right here is going to require a password of 15 characters, one uppercase, one number, and one special character. So then you just want to save the file, write that out. Now let's put this thing to the test. So sudo password, which is the password changing command in Linux, and the user's name is Abel 800-50750. All right. So let's just try one that's less than 15 characters, just password, and it contains less than one digit. So, well, I guess that's how it starts. But anyway, as you can see there, that's not going to work. All right, so let's try it again. So let's give it a digit, password 1, less than one uppercase letter. All right, let's try it again. All right, so an uppercase letter and a digit, less than one non-alphanumeric. So you can see that the password policy has been enforced. That's one aspect of a password policy. Let's consider another one. How about we have the users change their password at first login? We issue them a company specified password and make it so that they change it when they first log in. Hypothetical scenario, the company gives the user, their initial login password on a piece of paper. It gets improperly handled. Someone gets a hold of it. Now, of course, this is, there are so many ways around that. Always, though, with cybersecurity, the goal is to slow down the attacker. You are never going to patch all the holes. You want to implement different layers of defense, and this is just another way of putting another layer of defense in there. Make the user pick a new password, which, of course, hey, they may write it down on a Post-it note, but, again, you're just slowing the attacker down. So What we're going to do now is make it so that the user has to change their password at first login. So here we go. So to do this, we are going to introduce a new user named George Roberts. And we're going to go ahead and add him to the system. And to do so, we're going to use sudo add user. And this brings up the concept of user naming conventions. And again, not super duper Fort Knox secure, but again, you're slowing down the attacker. So instead of using easy to guess username conventions, we're going to use a sort of complicated username convention involving the last 4 letters of the user's name, their birth date, and then the time the user was created. So that adds in an additional piece of information that unless the attacker knows what time the user was created, they're not going to be able to guess it. And it's, in a way, it's kind of like brute forcing another password, but just another layer of security for usernames. Something that's not impossible to remember, but something that's, you know, not easy for an attacker to figure out either. It's always a balance between convenience and security. So anyway, let's add our user George. And before we do that, we want to get the time so we can know what to put in the username. So it's 640. We're going to use 0640 in the username. So let's go ahead and add user. And his name is George Roberts, so it's Robe, R-O-B-E. His birth date is 1982, and November was the month. And we've got 0640 here. And of course, don't forget sudo. So there's that. And we're going to give him a new password. And we're going to make it so he has to change it anyway. Let's just go with something, you know, like password 1. All right. And his name is going to be George Roberts. And we won't give him a room number or anything. And that's it. So George Roberts. So now let's make it so he has to change his password upon first login. To do so, all we've got to do is go up here and we got a sudo password. The key argument here is expire. And we are going to make it so that George's password expires as soon as he logs in. All right, now the thing to do is to log in as George and watch this work. All right, so we want to pick, password policies are going to be enforced, of course. So we want to pick a password that is long, strong, and complex. Okay, so George's password is good to go. And that's how you make passwords expire upon first login. So now let's explore the concept of least privilege. And the principle of least privilege is just you only give a person the privileges they need to do their job. So let's say that George Roberts is a member of the IT team, but all we want him to do is change firewall rules. Derick Ableton goes, hey, George, I need you to open up port 22, or I need you to close port 22. We're going to shut down SSH. And so George will have just enough privilege to do so. So let's look at how to give a user limited sudo privilege on Ubuntu. So to edit the sudoers file, which is the file that specifies what kind of sudo privileges users have on the system and to what extent, we want to use a utility called visudo, which makes sure that we don't really mess up the sudo file. So you'll just want to go sudo visudo, and then we're going to go ahead and add George to this. Now you want to go down till you get to here, user privilege specification. And this is where we're going to put in George's privileges. What we need to do here is just put in George's username. And then we put in this line right here, all equals all. And since we're learning about this, the point is not to have a perfect understanding of how to edit the sudo file, but just to kind of explore how to get certain things done. In this case, all we want is George to have super user privileges with the UFW command. So this stuff right here has to do with the machines he can do this on, users and groups or some such. But just know that once we do this, he will be able to only execute UFW with super user privileges. And UFW, uncomplicated firewall, is located in user sbin. So the USR sbin UFW. And now we just write that out, and now George has the ability to run UFW and make changes to the firewall. And we can log into George's account and see that he's able to change firewall rules but not do anything else as a super user. So let's just go here and switch our user over to George. All right. Past all this, and let's go ahead and change that resolution. Okay, there we go. Open up yield terminal. All right. So George is going to attempt to cat the set shadow file, which is where the hash passwords are stored on a Linux system. Cat set shadow, and you need super user privileges to read that file. So here we go. All right, so here we see that he's not allowed to. However, let's let him add port 22 to the firewall rules. Let's open up port 22. So sudo UFW allow 22, and there we go. So we've seen here that George has least privilege. He's allowed to change firewall rules, but he's not allowed to do anything else as a super user. Now, we're going to do some user management. And in the last video, we set up an initial user on the other machine, Manuel Artur. So we're going to remove Manuel, or we're going to add Abel, make him the admin on that machine. And we're going to remove Artur and then go and make him a normal user. So just a good demonstration of user management. So here we are back on the employee machine, and what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and add Derick Ableton as a user on the employee machine, make him a super user, an admin user, and we're going to add back Manuel Artur as a normal user. So let's go ahead and do that. And in Fedora, we can just use add user, which will go ahead and create the home directory and set up bash as the shell and give them all the necessary files that they need. So user able 800 50750. All right. Artur's password. All right. So he's all set up. And when you want to make a user super user in Fedora, it's a little different from other flavors of Linux, as far as I know, but this is really to demonstrate just doing these things on different Linux variants. So what we need to do is add Abel to the wheel group, which is basically a super user group. It's an admin group, and on Fedora, that's what we need to do here. So to do so, what we're going to do is use a command called usermod, which will change Abel's group affiliation. So let's go ahead and do that. Sudo usermod A for add or append, and G for the group we're going to append it to. Wheel Abel 800 50570. Oops, my bad. 750. There we go. All right, so Abel has been added to wheel, which means Abel is a super user. And we also want to give Abel a decent password. We'll just carry over the one we used from the last system. So let's go ahead and just make sure that Derick is in the wheel group. And what we can see here, if we go up, we can see that Derick Ableton is in the wheel group, along with Artur, which we're going to change here in a second. Now, let's go ahead and yeah, go ahead and set him up with a decent password. So sudo password able 800 50750. All right, so he's got his password changed. And next thing we're going to do is go ahead and log out as Artur and just log in as Able, and we're going to remove Artur and add him back as a normal user. No, thank you. All right, let's open up a terminal here. So now we're logged in as Able. Let's go ahead and delete Artur, and we have admin privileges, so we can do so. And we'll use the command user del to do that. R2 8312. All right, so R2 has been deleted. Now, also, when you use user del, it's going to leave the remnants of that user. In other words, our home directory. As you'll see here, let's go back. Sudo lsl home R2. There we go. So we need to get rid of that. And we'll just go rmrf sudo rmrf home R2. There we go. So R2 has been deleted from the system. And now we want to add R2 back using our usernaming convention. So let's go ahead and get the time. And it's going to be 0826. So let's go ahead and add R2 8312 0826. There we go. And let's go ahead and give him a decent password. 120826. Okay, so there you go. Artur is now just a normal Joe on the system, and Derick Ableton is the admin. So in this video, we've seen how to implement, or we've looked into the concept of least privilege a little bit, how to give users only the privileges they need to do the things they need to do. We've looked at user management on Fedora. We have looked at the concepts of naming conventions and password policies, and we've learned how to enable password policies on Ubuntu. So the next video I plan on doing will cover firewall rules. We'll be looking at firewall rules on the pfSense and exploring different concepts in cybersecurity that way. So for now, I'll see you, pals.